No, it's the experiences that come that is also a part of the great heritage that we have in this country that I wouldn't want to lose for anything in the world. A few minutes ago, I understand you had a remarkable young man who came and spoke to you. I had a chance to meet him. I've already heard several people tell me about his magnificent speech. I wish I'd been here to hear it. If Delta had been a little more cooperative, I probably would have. But when I met him, I was reminded again that freedoms are ours, not because we did something great for them, but because young men like that did and have kept them for us. I want us to keep all of our freedoms, and I also never want us to forget how we got them and how we preserve them. I have a school teacher friend in Little Rock, Arkansas. She's a teacher at the Joe T. Robinson High School. Her name is Martha Cothran. Martha and I are the same age, and we've been friends a long time, and she told me about something she did 2 years ago when school started in 2005. Martha's a real active member of the American Legion Auxiliary and very patriotic lady, very concerned that a lot of her high school students really didn't understand much about our freedom and how we got it. So Martha, on the first day of school, with the permission of the school principal, took all of the desks out of her classroom, every last one of them. So the kids walk in first period, and the room's empty. And they walk in and they say, "Miss Cothran, where's our desk?" And she said, "You don't get a desk until you tell me how you earn it." Well, some of the kids said, "I guess we have to make good grades." And she said, "Well, I expect you to make good grades, but that's not how you get a desk." Some of them said, "You want us to behave?" She said, "Oh, you will behave in here." But that's not going to get you a desk. So they sit on the floor or stand against the wall through the entire period, and second period comes, same thing, third period. By lunch, kids had gotten on their cell phones and called their parents and said, "Ms. Cothran has lost her mind. She won't let us have a desk." Shortly after noon, all 4 of the local network television affiliates had news crews out at Joe T. Robinson High School in Little Rock to find out what happened to this teacher who apparently had gone off her rocker and had taken all of the desks out of the classroom. The last period of the day, when no one had figured out how to get a desk, Martha Cothran stood before her 6th period class and she said, "Well, it doesn't look like anyone's going to figure it out on their own, so I'm going to go ahead and let you in on how you get a desk." She walked over to the door of her classroom, opened the door, and when she did, in walked 27 veterans, every one of them carrying a school desk. And they walked in and they put those desks up in rows in her classroom. And as they were putting the desk up, Martha Cothran said, "Kids, you don't have to earn your desk after all, because these guys, they already did. And what they did for you was to give you the opportunity to sit in this classroom, and we're not going to charge you a dime for the education you're getting, and you don't have to buy your books. You don't have to pay for the desk you sit in. Because these guys and some of their friends who didn't even come back, they paid a price that you couldn't afford." And she said, "I just want you to remember that when you sit here in this classroom and you enjoy the education, just remember that while it may not cost you anything today, it cost these guys more than you'll ever be able to calculate." Martha said she asked those kids to write essays on what they had learned, and what those kids said to her she'll never forget as long as she lives. I hope we never forget that our freedoms came at a very high price. And I know some of you in this room helped provide those freedoms, and included in those freedoms are the freedoms we have under the Second Amendment of our Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, this is far beyond just some political issue to become fodder for the campaign. This is a fundamental, foundational issue as to whether or not generations in the future will be able to enjoy the same freedoms that we have. Somebody's paid a high price for us to have those freedoms, and we better make sure that future generations get to enjoy them as we have. Thank you very much for letting me have this opportunity to visit with you. God bless you.
We have a few questions for you.
Right.
Do you believe that waiting periods on handgun purchases actually reduce crime?
The question waiting periods, no, I don't believe that that's an effective way. Instant background checks is a far more effective way. But waiting periods only inconvenience people like me, that when I go shopping, I don't want to be inconvenienced. I want what I want, and I'd like it now. So.
Question 2. President Bush has ordered all federal agencies to maximize hunting opportunities on federal lands. If elected president, how would you advance this policy?
Well, it's an important part of managing the wildlife, and frankly, it's critical for the preservation of species and also for the preservation of the great traditions of hunting. In my state, hunting and fishing licenses are fairly stable, but in most states there's been dramatic declines in the number of hunting and fishing licenses, in part because there are fewer and fewer public lands for people to enjoy. And that is a real concern to people like me, because I said as a governor, I never want hunting and fishing to become the exclusive domain of only the extraordinarily affluent, and that it would deny kids who grew up like I did the opportunity to grow up hunting and fishing. One of the first things I worked for as a governor was dedicating 1/8 of a penny in sales tax for conservation in our state. So we have in our Constitution a dedicated stream of funds, 45% of which goes to our Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, 45% to our state parks for the maintenance and the preservation of parks and lands, and then another 9% to our Department of Heritage and 1% to keep Arkansas beautiful, all of which dedicated to conservation. But it's allowed us the opportunity to enhance the number of wildlife officers, to improve the number of fisheries and habitats that we have. We have spent enormous amounts of money in buying lands to make sure that they would forever be preserved for the public and not bought up by a handful of people who would make it more and more difficult. Our goal was that every kid in Arkansas would be within a bicycle ride of a fishing hole, and every kid would be able to access adequate hunting lands. Because if we don't do that, the great traditions that frankly are so important to many of us and have given us a great heritage in this country would be lost forever.
The United Nations continues to push restrictions on the civilian ownership of firearms. If elected president, how would you continue to oppose those efforts as the current administration has done?
Well, I'm grateful the current administration has opposed those efforts, and as I said earlier, we should never ever think that we have any obligation to succumb to the pressures of any law other than our own Constitution and the statutes that we ourselves pass. And frankly, if the United Nations continues to come at us with such outrageous things, then we should not be too disappointed if the whole thing were to break off and float away in the East River, never to be seen or heard from again.
Final question. Some have argued that the Second Amendment means different things in different places, that it's okay for New York City or Chicago to impose more restrictions on gun owners' rights than Arkansas or Wyoming. Do you agree with that?
Obviously, I do not agree with that. Again, there are no geographical boundaries or restrictions in the text of the Second Amendment. It means what it says what it means, and that should stand. And no judge should ever be able to somehow create language that is not in the Constitution. And I think it's not only unconstitutional, but it is absurd on its face that some rights would be more of a right in certain locations, but you would step across a boundary and somehow those rights would be lost because of the city or the state in which you suddenly stepped. Can you imagine if we said that as it related to the freedom of the press? In other words, the press would be free to write whatever they wanted unless they wrote something very bad about me, and then it was because I was in their presence they wouldn't be able to write it. Come to think of it, that's a heck of a good law. I think we should pass it. Obviously, you're laughing because you know that would never work. Well, by the same token, it's equally absurd and laughable that we would have geographical boundaries on the tenets of the Second Amendment. So clearly, we should not do that. I would never want to be a part of it, and I think that people who advocate it simply just have not done their homework on the Second Amendment, and maybe something simple could fix it. a class in ninth grade civics. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.